Alright, so we're going to talk about some scales and their structures. We've got some scales here. We're going to deal with the major, the minor, the pentatonic, the minor pentatonic, the minor harmonic, the minor melodic, the diminished, the augmented, the whole tone, and the blues scales. And you'll find out why I'm addressing these scales as we go through ours as we address this theory and these structures. First of all, we're going to deal with the major scale, but I also want you to understand that these scales I really want you to go through later and really apply them with different roots, starting with different roots in MuseScore and on your keyboard, really understanding the intervals, the steps that construct them, and what they look like on paper. I mean, that's really going to be up to you to spend some time with that. So let's take a look at this. First of all, we have the major scale. And we've talked about that already. It's a basic building block to understand your intervals and your steps. So, you know, the major scale is going to go root, whole step, which is the second interval, whole step, which is the third interval, half step, which is the fourth interval, whole step, which is the fifth interval, whole step, which is the sixth interval, whole step, which is the seventh interval, half step, which is back to the root 1 octave up. And that's your major scale, and it has 7 tones and 7 notes in it. The next is the minor. So the minor scale is going to be root, whole step, which is the second interval, half step, which is going to be the minor third interval, whole step, which is going to be the fourth interval, whole step, which is going to be the fifth interval, half step, which is going to be the minor sixth interval, whole step, which is going to be the minor seventh interval, and whole step again back to the root 1 octave up. And that is your minor scale. Next, we're going to talk about the pentatonic scale and the structure of the pentatonic scale. The major pentatonic scale starts out with root, and it goes whole step to the second interval, whole step to the third interval, it goes step and a half to the fifth interval, it goes whole step again to the sixth interval, and then step and a half back to the root, which is 1 octave up, and that is your major pentatonic scale. Your minor pentatonic scale is going to be root, and then it's going to go step and a half to the minor third interval, then it's going to go whole step to the fourth interval, whole step again to the fifth interval, then it's going to go step and a half to the minor seventh interval, then it's going to go whole step to the root again 1 octave up, and that is your minor pentatonic scale. Now, both of those scales have 5 notes in them and 5 tones. Next, we're going to deal with the harmonic minor scale. So the harmonic minor scale starts out with root, and then it goes whole step to the second interval, it goes half step to the minor third interval, it goes whole step to the fourth interval, it goes whole step again to the fifth interval, it goes half step to the minor sixth interval, it goes step and a half to the seventh interval, and then it goes half step to the root 1 octave up, and that is your harmonic minor scale structure and its intervals. Next, we will address the melodic scale. The melodic scale starts out with root, and then it goes whole step to the second interval, it goes half step to the minor third interval, then it goes whole step to the fourth interval, whole step to the fifth interval, whole step to the sixth interval, whole step to the seventh interval, and half step to the root 1 octave up, and that is your melodic minor scale. The next scale we're going to talk about is the diminished scale. I'm going to show you 2 ways to run this scale that theoretically some people may argue this point, but that diminished and augmented scales I run 2 different ways, and I will explain it to you later. Just make notes of it. The first thing is you have the root of the diminished scale. So we're starting with C, we've got the root. Then we go whole step to the second interval, half step to the minor third, then we go whole step to the fourth interval, half step to the minor fifth interval, then we go whole step to the minor sixth interval, half step to the sixth interval, then we go whole step to the sixth interval or seventh interval, then half step back to the root and C. Now, one of the things about the thing about the diminished scale is it's going to go whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step. You're going to keep doing that. And you can reverse that to where it goes root, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step. So there's two different ways to do that, and I want you to make notes of them because they can definitely do different coloration with things you're working with. And the augmented scale, the same. First of all, we'll start out with the root of the augmented scale. We will go step and a half to the minor third, then we'll go half step to the third interval, then we'll go step and a half to the fifth interval, then we'll go half step to the minor sixth interval, then we'll go step and a half to the seventh interval, and half step to the root one octave up. And the augmented scale basically runs root, step and a half step, step and a half step, step and a half step, and so on and so forth. And you can reverse that to where you're going root, half step, step and a half step, step and a half step, step and a half. And there's two different ways it can cause different colorations. I want you to make notes of both of those ways. Next is the whole tone scale. So you have the whole tone scale, you'll have the root, you got a whole step to the second interval, whole step to the third interval, whole step to the minor fifth interval, whole step again to the minor sixth interval, whole step again to the minor seventh interval, whole step again to the root one octave up, and that's the whole tone scale. It's steps of wholes, it's whole steps all the way, every direction you want to go. Whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step. And so now we're going to talk about the blues scale. The blues scale, real simply, is basically you have the pentatonic scale that we talked about. Now, when you're dealing with that pentatonic scale, if you go back or look at the notes that you've made, that in the major pentatonic scale, you just add a minor third to that scale. Add a minor third to that scale, and you will have added the note. So now that the pentatonic scale is now 6 notes, and it's the blues scale with the added minor third. When you're dealing with the minor blues scale, that you basically want to add the minor fifth interval. So whenever you're dealing with either one of those scales, you go back and look at those and add those intervals to those scales, the minor third for the major pentatonic and the minor fifth to the minor pentatonic, and you've got those two blues scales. And that's real easy to understand, and I'll even go through them with you. That basically you've got the pentatonic scale, correct? So we're going to go root, and then we're going to go whole step, and then we're going to go half step. That adds that minor third. Then we're going to go whole step, then we're going to go step and a half, and then we're going to go, I'm sorry, I messed that up. I very much apologize. The pentatonic scale, we've got root, the major pentatonic, then we've got whole step, and you want to add that major third, so the next would be a half step, correct? And that adds that minor third into that pentatonic major scale. Then you would go your another half step, which would make that third part, add that third that was in the major pentatonic scale. Then you want to go step and a half to that fifth. And then you want to go whole step to that sixth, and then step and a half to the root and one octave up. I'm sorry if I kind of goofed there. The next thing is when you're dealing with the minor pentatonic, you want to add that minor fifth. So you would start out as root, and then you would go step and a half to that minor third. Then you would go whole step to that fourth. You'd go whole step again after you add the minor fifth. You add that minor fifth, that half step, and then add that whole step to that fifth interval. if that makes sense. So if you go back and look at those pentatonic scales, and you'll understand that I added the minor third and the minor fifth in between there. So you just add those two notes into it and you'll have the blues scale. And I hope that was real simple, and I hope that laid that out really simply. And I basically want you to do that with different root notes from starting from, and make some good notes of those steps and the intervals that are in them. And I want you to go into MuseScore, and I want you to do the same thing. Here's the major scale, here's the minor scale, here's the pentatonic scale, here's the minor pentatonic scale, here's the melodic or the harmonic minor scale, here's the melodic minor scale, here is the diminished scale, here's the whole tone scale, or the augmented scale, I'm sorry, and the whole tone scale. And I want you to practice writing that out from different root notes to really understand it. I could get into this and spend a lot of time, just going over it, like some kind of big classroom, but that's the work that I want you to do to understand it. But basically, there it is laid out on music, and I want you to go through there. Later on, you'll understand why these structures are going to be very important as far as theory is concerned. But those are the scales we've talked about: the major scale, the minor scale, the pentatonic scale, the pentatonic minor scale, the harmonic minor scale, the melodic minor scale, the diminished scale, the augmented scale, the whole tone scale, and the blues scale. And you will understand why, as we go along through studying that, why those structures I feel are going to be very important to you. And I want you to go through it on your keyboard, and I want you to look at, from different roots where you're starting from. We're doing it on your keyboard and in MuseScore here, using your intervals and separations and understanding those interval separations so that you can very easily look at a piece of music and understand that interval separation. It's a minor fifth, or it's a minor third, or it's a fourth, or something like that from different notes. So that can be kind of complex, and I'm not getting into that too much right now. I just wanted to lay out those basic structures of those basic scales, the steps to construct them, the intervals contained within them. And that was basically what I wanted to address next. That's the next basic component of music theory to build complex structures. And, on the keyboard and in MuseScore, so that you can go through them and understand them and kind of what they look like and what notes are involved with them, the steps and the intervals. So I hope that was very simple, and I hope you have fun constructing some scales. Peace, out, love.